Who's the best quarterback in the Big 12? Is it Sam Leavitt? Is it Avery Johnson? Is it Sawyer Robertson? Is it someone else? Well, that's what we're going to talk about on this crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Kansas State.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into a special Locked On crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Kansas State. I am the Locked On Sun Devils host, Richie Bradshaw, your guide, your expert, your best friend for all things Sun Devils on the gridiron, on the hardwood, and everything in between. Joined with Locked On Kansas State host Christian Rauh. Christian, always happy to have good conversation with you and talking Kansas State, who is one of the bigger programs in the Big 12, have been for a little while. And honestly, we'll start here. I know this isn't on our script, which, by the way, speaking of the script, we are going to be talking about the top 5 quarterbacks in the Big 12. We are going to be talking about the supporting casts of ASU and Kansas State. And is Kansas State the biggest threat to ASU to repeat as Big 12 champions? You know what? I also got to mention that today's episode is sponsored by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So before we even get to that, Christian, do you think that Kansas State is borderline being disrespected right now for talking about Big 12 odds? Because ASU is getting a lot of talk for sure, but there's a lot of Baylor, there's a lot of Texas Tech. BYU is still getting love despite what's going on with their quarterback situation. I feel, as an outsider, like K-State's getting overlooked.
I could see both sides of it. Kansas State finished the season 8-4 last year. So if you're not seen as a favorite, I guess it makes a lot of sense. You start the season 7-1, the wheels fall off in Houston, right? And then you find a way to finish the season 8-4 after a Rate Bowl win. So I can see it. I can understand why maybe there is some scenes as disrespect. But on the flip side, we've also seen our friends at FanDuel have shown odds of a 4-way tie for the favorites. We've seen it be Arizona State, Kansas State, Baylor, and I think BYU is still in that mess as well. I think Texas Tech as well up in that area. So there's a lot of, I guess, both sides. You can see some people giving a little bit of love to Kansas State, which I think is warranted, and I can explain why, especially with that supporting cast. But also, if you're not saying Kansas State's a favorite, and I'll be honest, I don't know if they should be considered the absolute favorite, I would give the nod to you. You guys won the Big 12 championship last year. You guys have brought a lot of returning back. I think it's at this point in time, as we're heading into July, I think before you even get a chance to hear what Kenny Dillingham and the rest of the coaches and players get to say, what Chris Kleiman and Avery Johnson get to say in Texas next week at the Big 12 Media Days, I think it's safe to say that Arizona State deserves the respect to be seen as the favorite heading into the new year.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it should be, which is really crazy that we have seen them tied with odds with so many people, because it's not like this team made a Cinderella run and then lost everything. They did make a Cinderella run until further notice. They had to prove that they can do it twice, but almost everything is back. Like Cam Skattebo's gone, that's massive. But Sam Leavitt's back, Jordyn Tyson's back, and we'll talk about all of that in a moment. But I did just want to get your opinion. By the way, our friends over at FanDuel currently have Utah tied at the top with the best odds to win the conference. So we're right back to doing that again. So I guess we'll see.
Hey, I'll say this about Utah. I mean, although they had a down year last year, this is the Big 12 conference. And I know that some of these teams, including yourself, is new to this conference, but there is no bigger parity from top to bottom, from first to
Oh,
last
no.
in college football. This is why I think it's the best conference in college football. They might not, you can make the argument that they might not produce the absolute best teams, or you want to call it the blue bloods. If that's what you want to go for, if that's your argument, fine. But you cannot make an argument against saying that this is the best conference from top to bottom, from the very tippy top, in this case, Arizona State was last year, to the absolute bottom, which was Oklahoma State last year, an Oklahoma State team who beat an SEC school last year, but couldn't beat a Big 12 school last year. This is the best conference in college football. If you don't believe that, you need to debate a door.
Yep, I agree with you. And speaking of the best conference in college football, I don't think it's debatable that this is the best quarterback conference in
Oh,
college
man.
football. Because from top to bottom, I mean, you've got so many great quarterbacks. ASU and Kansas State have two of the best. I mentioned Sawyer Robertson from Baylor, who a lot of people love, but this is a great conference. And that's where I want to steer this conversation is your personal top five quarterbacks in the conference. And it's not an easy task to do. You're leaving off a lot of big names. And one thing I do want to point out is Jake Retzloff, the BYU quarterback, we're not going to get too much detail into that. If you're curious what's going on, there's all sorts of stuff. Plus, our man Jake Hatch for Locked On Cougars, Locked On BYU, has been all over that stuff, and he's got behind the scenes stuff. So definitely check him out, and he'll break stuff for you. Little shout out there for him. But, he's not included in this because it's very unlikely he's going to play. And yet we're still looking at one of the best conferences in college football for the quarterback play. So, Christian, I'm going to hand it to you. Give me your top five. Let's go 1 to 5.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. This is tough. This is a really tough thing to do. And I don't think if we had the same conversation about top SEC quarterbacks, top 5, top ACC quarterbacks, top 5, this would be as hard of a conversation. I think that this is truly the best conference when it comes to quarterbacks from top to bottom. Even a team, and I'm sure your fans are going to like this, but even a team like Arizona, who I think is going to finish towards the bottom, if not the very bottom of the conference this season, Noah Fifita is still a good quarterback.
He's
Now, he had some
solid.
downsides last year, but he's a solid quarterback that
He's
could be seen
exactly.
as a top 5 quarterback in some of these other conferences. He's not going to be on my list in
Yeah.
this one. Look, I think it's fair to say that there's going to be a little bit biased when you look at this top 5. And I do put Avery Johnson as the best quarterback in the Big 12. And I can explain because I think
Oh,
he's a great dual
no.
threat quarterback. You can go ahead.
Yeah.
And I understand you're going to probably go the same way for me. I think he's a dual threat quarterback. I think he has the ability to be an absolute stud. But not only do I look at it for what he was, because there was some inconsistencies last year, but what I look forward to and what I'm going to see in the future. And I think the potential is completely unlimited. Bringing in this new offensive coordinator, Matt Wells, who has the sole keys of the offense now, who has been fantastic with past quarterbacks. He was in charge. He was the head coach at Utah State when Jordan Love was the quarterback. Now the Green Bay Packers quarterback. Very good on the play action. Avery Johnson will shine in play action with his speed and his arm. They brought in some tall wide receivers. They brought in size that could hopefully help some of those passing inconsistencies that we saw towards the end of the season last year. And the offensive line is reloaded. The running back room is just absolute speed. So when I look at it for what could be in 2025, that's why I have Avery Johnson towards the top end at my number 1, because I do truly think he is a dark horse candidate for the Heisman Trophy, not just for Player of the Year Big 12, but for the Heisman Trophy, Richie. And while we're at it, since we're talking this college crossover, I do have Sam Leavitt as number 2, and I think this could be a 1A, 1B conversation. I don't think that this needs to be a strictly 1 versus 2. I don't think we have to fight over this. I don't think we need fisticuffs because Sam Leavitt is a hell of a talent. He's fantastic. He's very good, and I can't wait to see more of him. And I'll be honest with you. I'll be the first one to say it, unless you've already said it before me. If they had Jordyn Tyson on that field, they wouldn't have lost against Texas. And they might not have lost any time in that college ball playoffs. Now that he has them coming back, it's going to be a really hard battle. And yet another reason why you should say that Arizona State deserves to be seen as the preseason favorite heading into the new season. So there's my 1-2. I think we're probably maybe in agreement with that. Maybe.
We'll see.
Oh, man. Oh, Oh, you want me to give you all five and then go to you? Is that where you want me to go?
Yeah, hit me 3, 4, 5, and then I guess I'm gonna break some hearts here.
Okay, sounds good. Breaking hearts. That sounds awful. Maybe we should have done fisticuffs. Okay, number 3, I'm going to go with Sawyer Robertson from Baylor. And again, this could be a number. And again, I think this is maybe 1C instead of number 3. Sawyer Robinson
Yeah,
from Baylor is
I've seen a lot of people put him 1.
he's incredible. And he might be the one that ends up being the top quarterback when it's all said and done. Baylor is scary on the schedule for us. We don't play Arizona State on the schedule this year until we wind up most likely facing you in Arlington for the Big 12 championship game. But Sawyer Robinson, facing him in Waco, that's not one that I'm looking forward to have in the middle of the season. So not looking forward to facing him. I think he is an absolute talent. I can see him being an NFL talent quarterback. He has the tools to make that happen. And he's one of the sole reasons why I think Dave Aranda gets to keep his job yet again in 2025.
Oh, he saved him. He saved him.
100%. And I think it happens yet again this season. And maybe they stop talking about him being on the hot seat because of Sawyer Robinson, at least while he's there. I don't think that even becomes a conversation for Baylor this year. That's how good I think Sawyer Robinson is. Number 4, rounded out here, Rauh Beck. I think you still got to give it to a guy like him from Iowa State. I think he still has the tools. Now, the biggest question is, can he continue to do it without Higgins and Noel, two 1,000-yard receivers he had last year? He had 160 receptions just to those 2 receivers alone. He's got a lot of shoes, a lot of progress, a lot of target share to take over. And they didn't bring in a lot of stuff in the wide receiver room. I have a feeling that's going to go a lot to the tight ends. So will that be enough for him to still be seen as a top quarterback? But I still like his talent. And then number 5 might surprise you, maybe, but I really like Hoover from TCU.
Yes.
I really like him. And
He
I
made
think
my top 5.
He's not talked about enough. And although I don't know what we're going to see from TCU this year, TCU is one of those teams where I can't put my eye on them yet. I can't figure out, are they a 5-7 team? Are they a 9-3 team? I can't figure out TCU yet, but I think it'll all come down to Hoover. So there's my top 5, and I'm sticking with it. Avery Johnson, to me, is the best quarterback in the Big 12 and a dark horse candidate for the Heisman Trophy.
I mean, if there's one thing that the Heisman voters love, it's dual threat quarterbacks. And we've actually had this conversation previously last month. If you guys did not see that episode, check it out, because me and Christian got in a little bit of a debate on who the best dual threat quarterback is. I'm sticking with my man, Sam Leavitt. Avery Johnson is probably the guy. So we will see. But as far as my top 5 goes, I mean, I don't have too much different from years as far as who's in my top 5. We do have one quarterback difference. Sam Leavitt, number 1 for me. Until further notice, the way that he ended last season, first 4 weeks of the year, you're like, he's good. He clearly is a redshirt freshman. There's stuff to learn. By the end of the year, you're like, this is a 4-year starter. Like, this guy's just absolutely dealing the ball right now. And he was dominating even when Jordyn Tyson got injured. So I think he's going to pick up. You want to talk about dark horses to win the Heisman? Sam Leavitt, dark horse to win the Heisman. Number 2 for me.
Is he even considered a dark horse, though? I think when you look at Heisman Trophy candidates and you see favorites, like I think Sam Leavitt's on the list. Like I don't even consider him a dark horse candidate. Yeah, I think he has him as a favorite. Yeah.
I mean, we'll take that respect for sure.
Just saying.
I'm gonna break some K-State hearts right here. Number 2 for me, Sawyer Robertson. I do think that Sawyer is got the potential to be the best passer, or at a minimum lead the conference in passing yards this year. He's a very talented kid. I've seen plenty of lists rank him as the number 1 quarterback in the Big 12. Do I hate it? Yes. Do I think it's justified? Honestly, no. But I mean, I understand their logic. Number 3 is Avery Johnson, though. What's that?
I said there's an argument for Robinson.
There is
an argument. I think there's a solid argument for all 3 of the top 3 quarterbacks that you and I have to be number 1.
Yep.
And then if there's an argument for any of the other ones we talk about, I'm a little bit backed up. But for the top 3 that you and I both have, as you can see, is in a different order. I think there's an argument for all 3 to be number 1.
Yep. So I love Avery. I think you encapsulated it perfectly with the way that he's just able to run the ball. Number 4 for me, I'm making a pivot between my number 4 and number 5, but I am going to go Josh Hoover, number 4. Mm-hmm. He's another guy I think has a chance to lead the conference in passing yards. I think him and Sonny Dykes are just going to have a great passing game this year. And number 5 for me, originally number 4, but I pivoted, is Behren Morton from Texas Tech. He's classic Texas Tech quarterback, just airs the ball out all over the field. But I think that he's a little bit more than that. And we're going to find out this year if he can do it, because Taj Brooks is gone, one of the most
Yes.
prolific running backs that program has had in the last several years. So he's going to be challenged, but he does have some weapons to throw to out wide. They completely revamped that offensive line. I'm excited for Behren Morton. And Rocco Becht, he is right there for me. That was a difficult decision to leave him out of my top 5, but he's right there, especially because he's another guy who can sling it around the field. But as good as those quarterbacks are, I think right now ASU and Kansas State have two of the best chances to meet each other in the college football playoff, and the quarterbacks are going to be supported by terrific supporting casts. That's what we're going to talk about next on this crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Kansas State, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing right now. Whether you're into baseball under the lights, golf on the green, high-stakes sports action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Even if you want to join them, you can still hop in on the action. Or you can take a look at those Big 12 odds. I'm liking ASU. Christian's liking Kansas State. Maybe you do like Utah, or maybe you like a sleeper team, sleeper quote unquote, like a TCU. Do you think Houston can turn that around? Are you big on Kansas? Well, check out those odds. Go ahead and see if you like them. So I've been using FanDuel a long time. I love it. They have a widget that will open up on your phone so you can track your bets without even going into all those details. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5. And when your bet wins, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. Open the FanDuel app or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thanks, as always, for tuning in to make Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Kansas State your first podcast of the day. Shout out to our everydayers who are here every day. So we got a really good thing going on with these two programs, with Arizona State and with Kansas State. Kansas State has had very prolonged success in the Big 12 prior to ASU getting there. And when ASU got the win over Kansas State, I can tell you, Christian, that this was one of the most exciting wins that the program has had in recent memory. I did not pick ASU to lose very many games last year. Until the day of the game, I had Kansas State to win that game. Going to Manhattan is about one of the most terrifying places that you can go to in college football. That's a small town, the Little Apple. They've got a big old stadium to go to and a good team to support. So I was intimidated. They went in, they got a win, but Kansas State, even an 8-4 team last year, they're capable of winning the conference every year. And they are going to support Avery Johnson, one of the best quarterbacks in the conference, with some pretty good weapons this year.
Yeah, Xavier Alford for you was probably the biggest reason why they won that game, and it was on the second play of the game.
Friend of Locked On Sun Devils, friend of the show.
That interception in the second play of the game for Avery Johnson, he just didn't get it back together. Now, obviously, there was some great plays overall, but since that second play of the game, Arizona State just took over, and he could just never get it going in that one. At least that's what I felt when I was watching it. It just felt dull. It didn't feel like a normal kind of Kansas State game. And because this was a game that happened after the wheels fell off in Houston for Kansas State, they were really looking for a bounce back against Arizona State, and it didn't happen. This was the week right after losing to Houston, and they wound up losing that one to Arizona State. I think 24-14 was the final in that one. Obviously, looking back at it now, I mean, the losses that Kansas State had, the 4 losses, were Houston, of course. That's the oddball. That's the outlier. But were Arizona State and Iowa State, the 2 Big 12 championship teams, and then BYU, who was a great team, especially early in the season. Yeah. So the teams that they lost to were teams that were in contention all the way up till the very end, with the exception of Houston, one that just
They
happen
started
in the
ruining
Big 12.
seasons though last year. They started
Things that
ruining
happen
seasons last year. Yeah.
and this conference, that's going to happen. And that's why I'm a little worried about certain teams on the schedule, especially towards in the second half. Like, we have this stretch, right, in the second half of the season, towards the end of the season, and all the way up to the end as well. Our final 4 games, listen to this. We play Texas Tech, then we play at Oklahoma State, which they're not going to be 0-9 in the conference again.
No, not at all.
Then we play at Utah, which we know are not going to be as good or as bad as they were last
Bryce
year. They
Eccles
might
is
find
tough to
themselves.
play at.
Yeah. And then we finished the season at home, thankfully, but against Colorado, a team who's looking for a new identity, could potentially be 5-6 heading into the final game of the season. Coach Prime may be looking for bowl eligibility without Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter for the first time since he's ever really coached college football. So there's a crazy way for Kansas State to end the season. So I'm a little worried about that, but that's Big 12 football, baby.
Yep, and that's what we love about it coming from the Pac-12. They used to call it sandlot football because they just did not respect the conference, and the Pac-12 would beat up on each other. In the same way that Houston beat Kansas State last year, the first year of the college football playoff, ASU was the number 6 team in the nation. They were cruising to the Pac-12 championship, and they would have run into the eventual Heisman Trophy winner, Marcus Mariota, which would have been an amazing game. Well, unfortunately, they go to Corvallis, Oregon, and lose to Oregon State out of nowhere. And I've never turned off a game before. Prior to that, that is the first time I've ever turned off a game. I was sick. I was just unbelievable. But that was the Pac-12, and now this is the Big 12. It's the same thing, and it's volatile, but in the best way. ASU and Kansas State, though, they are in positions with the supporting cast that Sam Leavitt and that Avery Johnson have in place to make sure that they can stay ahead of the 8 ball. As long as the defense holds up its end of the bargain, as long as the run game stays good, and as long as the guys are catching the ball, I mean, they're in good spots right now. So looking at the supporting casts, I want to start with the biggest, most important player to your success of your quarterback. Everyone knows for ASU, that's Jordyn Tyson. Fun fact for you, Christian. From week 8 of last year to the end of the regular season, Jordyn Tyson paced the nation in receiving yards. He was legitimately, prior to injury, because he would have had the Pac-12 or Pac-12. Look at that. I got that on my mind.
Uh-oh.
The Big 12 title game against Iowa State, they carved up that secondary. That was without Jordyn Tyson. There's a chance he would have finished top 3 in Biletnikoff voting, which is crazy because Tedero McMillan, who played South at Arizona, finished top 3. You might have bumped him out. You weren't going to bump Travis Hunter. Maybe Nick Nash, who had a triple crown at San Jose State, gets bumped, but Jordyn Tyson was phenomenal last year. Him and Sam Leavitt, they share telepathy with each other. They just know where they're going to be on the field at all times. Tyson was averaging almost double-digit targets a game with the way that those two were working right now. So as far as supporting cast goes, ASU's got a good one, but it's Jordyn Tyson and everyone else.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you when it comes to who will be the top guy that needs Avery Johnson to step up. And I'm going to go with wide receiver 1 as well for Kansas State. And I think that's Jayce Brown. Look, they brought in a lot of wide receivers from the transfer portal, and they focused on size. They brought in really big guys into the mix. Jaron Bradley, Jaron Tibbs, 6'4", 6'5" guys, which are going to help in the long game. And when it comes to hoping being a deep ball threat, especially when we talk about that play action kind of conversation that we had earlier. And then, of course, in the red zone. Kansas State was amazing in the red zone when it was passing to their tight ends. They had 13 touchdowns to their tight ends in the red zone last year. That was the most in all of college football, not just the Big 12, but all of college football.
That's pretty good last I checked.
Right. It's very good. And for the record, all those tight ends are returning this year. And then you also add in 5-star recruit and Lincoln Cure to the mix. That there's a potential that you could be seeing a target share to 5 different productive tight ends in 2025 for Kansas State. 5 difference. But the biggest thing to me is still wide receiver 1 with Jayce Brown. Only had 47 receptions last year. Really didn't get it going until towards the end of the season. And we got a taste of what Jayce Brown could be under just Matt Wells. in the Rate Bowl game against Rutgers. He had 5 receptions for 60 yards, didn't score a touchdown, but that 5 receptions for 60 yards receiving wasn't even the most things that was most exciting about. Matt Wells started focusing on these new aspects when it came to Dylan Edwards out of the backfield, running some off-tackle speed runs. They were focusing on speed. Jayce Brown also has those speed. They did some jet sweeps with him coming from the outside. He had 3 carries for 42 yards, the only rushing attempts that he had the entire season. That happened with a new Matt Wells offense. So I think adding the size of these wide receivers, one, then adding the running back of the speed of Dylan Edwards, not adding, but making him be running back 1 after moving on from DJ Giddens, who's now an Indianapolis Colt. And then it's going to open up all these extra things for Jayce Brown, Richie, that's going to let him either be a deep threat on a play action. It's going to let him be potentially a rusher out of jet sweeps. You could use wide receiver screens. I think he is going to maybe have the most success and have the most benefit out of adding all these other players in the transfer portal. Some people think that might actually hinder him because it's taking away his target share. I think the complete opposite. I think he winds up having more than 47 receptions this year. He had 823 yards. I don't know if he makes it to 1,000. Who knows how that works? That's an arbitrary number anyways. But I do think we're going to see him have a much better season in 2025, one that impacts this team much more. So if I had to say the most impactful player, 100% it's Jayce Brown.
And I love that you bring up the tight end position because ASU's tight end position is loaded, and we have not seen them use it enough recently. But our tight end coach, Jason Mons, is one of the best recruiters the program has right now. They have brought in a 4-star tight end, including 2026, in each of the last 3 recruiting cycles. And one of the kids that got coming in this year, AJ Ia, I kid you not, Christian, I got to spring camp. He was able to be an early enrollee. He looked like an NFL player. I've never seen an 18-year-old kid as big and as strong as he was. I felt tiny next to him. It was phenomenal. I think they're going to have a really difficult time keeping him off the field. Shema Mateer, who's the number 1 tight end currently, had 5 scores last year. Should have had 6, but, sometimes you got those butterfingers and things happen. They bring in Kamari Anderson from Kentucky. He looks exceptional. Jaden Fortier, someone that I'm excited about, was a 4-star last year. He missed a year recovering from an ACL surgery. He's back. Tight end is loaded. I think they're going to get involved this year. The receiver position. ASU also attacked the transfer portal. They bring in Jalen Moss from Fresno State. He's going to plug into the slot. He's a very good player. Someone I'm interested in, Jaron Hamilton, coming in from Alabama. You hear that and you go, ooh, Alabama player. That's exciting. You saw with him once they figured out what his role was during spring ball, because it happened pretty quick. The first week you're there, it was like, you can see the talent. I'm not sure what he's going to do, but all of a sudden, then it really clicks, and you're like, oh, okay, he might be one of your starting receivers next to Jordyn Tyson. Very, very good. And both him and Tyson are field stretchers, which is going to be huge for ASU. And then you have Malik McClain, 2 catches last year, a 41-yard catch against Iowa State and a 42-yard touchdown trick play from Cam Skattebo in the Peach Bowl. We'll see what he can come up with. One thing I want to talk about real quick with you before we discuss who's the biggest threat to ASU, which Kansas State might be that team. Real quick, the running back situation. You guys are moving on from DJ Giddens, but there's a lot of hype behind Dylan Edwards. ASU is moving on from Cam Skattebo. They brought in Kanye Udo from Army, who ran for 1,100 yards last year, over 6 yards a clip, double-digit touchdowns on an RB team that we know runs the football a lot. And they've got some guys that I'm interested as well, like Tyson Brown. I'm interested to see how they replace Skattebo. He's almost unreplaceable. But what I've said before, as a famous Billy Bean would tell you from the Oakland A's back then, you got to replace these guys in the aggregate. You replace their numbers, and I think ASU is in a situation to do that.
Yeah, I love Udo, by the way. I loved watching him at Army. That Army team was excellent to watch, and we got to play Army this year. That's actually on our non-conference schedule, so knowing that he's not there anymore makes me feel a little better inside. But I do think he's going to be a great asset for Arizona State this coming season. Yeah, losing DJ Giddens was huge. And I'm right with you when it comes to the Moneyball reference. I've actually said this on my show as well. You got to replace
It's a
it in
great
the aggregate.
reference.
And I do think it actually is going to be the case for Kansas State this year as well. Dylan Edwards, amazing running back. He's fast, speedy, he's fun. We've seen it in the Big 12, not just with Kansas State, but when he was with Colorado on his freshman season. Last year, he had 74 carries for over 500 yards. He averaged almost 7.5 yards a carry. I mean, it's insane when he gets the ball in his hands. And I think his speed is only going to make Matt Wells much more excited on the offensive coordinator side. But I don't think we're going to see him in the backfield the majority of the time. I think you're going to see him line up in a whole bunch of different directions because they have so many other options that they can use in the running back room. I think Joe Jackson is completely underrated on this roster. Last year averaged almost 6 yards a carry on his 40 rushes. He only found the end zone once, but I think that changes because he was the third running back on the roster. And he really has the same kind of profile of what DJ Giddens does. He's almost like a DJ Giddens light, if you will. And now we get to see him be running back too. So I'm really excited to see what Joe Jackson gets to be behind Dylan Edwards. I truly think he's underrated. And then in the spring transfer portal window, the momentum for Kansas State just continued to cook. I think the portal was huge for Kansas State this year. I'm sure you could say the same about the Sun Devils, but they added Southeast Louisiana Lions, an FCS school, Antonio Martin Jr., a sophomore running back. He came in the spring portal, but listen to this. Absolute workhorse. They called this guy the thick one. He's 5'11", 220. I've heard it's actually more up to 235 right now. Perfect for short yard situations, perfect for goal line stand. We've already talked about the deep threats of the size of the wide receivers and the tight ends, what they do. Now you add in this big guy that can, help with the aggregate, as we mentioned with Dylan Edwards. And by the way, last year at the FCS level, I'm aware it's not Big 12, but he rushed for over 1,200 yards for Southeast Louisiana. He's going to be our third running back on the roster. Exciting stuff for Kansas State.
Yeah, it is. At the end of the day, though, what does he do? He gets on base. What does this guy do? Gets first downs. What's he do? He makes big plays. What's he do? He scores touchdowns. ASU, probably one of the top favorites to win the Big 12 as repeat champions. Who are the biggest threats? Kansas State might be that team. That's coming up next. This is a crossover edition of Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Kansas State, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And again, thank you guys so much for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Kansas State to make us your first listen of the day. Shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. You guys want other content? Locked On College Football, Locked On Big 12, Locked On anything in the Big 12. Honestly, that's good stuff. And for Locked On Sun Devils, check out Locked On Kansas State. For Locked On Kansas State, come stop by Locked On Sun Devils. Look, Christian, we've got a very interesting situation going on in the Big 12. ASU, one of the bigger favorites, and yet not the runaway, put a stamp on it favorite to win the Big 12. There's a lot of guys. We mentioned earlier, Utah currently is tied for the best odds to win the conference. Like, this is crazy. Texas Tech is loading up. We don't know what to do with TCU. Baylor could be really good this year. Maybe Utah bounces back. Who knows? Maybe Colorado is able to figure something out with Caden Salters and with Juju. Oh, goodness. Sorry, Colorado fans. I can't remember Juju's last name. Juju Lewis. Thank you. Juju Lewis. Kansas could come back with Jalen Daniels. Like, there's a lot of good stuff going on in the Big 12. But Christian, I'm going to hand you the mic. Sell me, the Sun Devil fan, the person who is willing to guarantee ASU repeats as champs. Tell me why Kansas State is not a contender to beat ASU, is the contender to beat ASU this year. Mike is yours.
I think the safe thing to say is we don't face each other till the end of the season. And I think that might just, that alone, and then I mean end of season, I mean in Arlington, that alone might be the reason why they're the best contenders, because they can take care of their conference and they wind up facing each other. Look, I think when it comes down to it, we saw this last year as well, we had a 4-way technically a 4-way tie at the top of the Big 12 standings with 2 lost teams in conference, and then they wound up Iowa State and Arizona State took the actual tiebreakers when it's all said and done. You're either going to be a 1-loss team and make it in, or you're going to have to battle again for being a 2-loss team. And I'm sure we're going to have one of those crazy 8 or 9-way tiebreaker conversations like we had towards the end of the season last year, who makes it to go fight for Dr. Pepper. Like, I can totally see that happening in this new year, but I'm not going to tell you why Kansas State is going to be the best contender, because I do think I've said that over and over in here. I think, look, Texas Tech has been a team that we continue to talk about with the money and things
Every
like that.
year.
They've rebuilt. They've done a lot of crazy things, but you don't face them either, right? We face them. You don't face them. I'm going to pick a team that we both face.
Oh, ASU does face them.
You guys do face Texas Tech?
Texas Tech. Yeah, we host them this year.
Oh, okay. Well, then
But that'll be a big game for us because that'll be head to head and everything. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I could have used them, but in this case, I'm not going to. I'm going to use Baylor. I think Baylor is probably the biggest threat. Not Kansas, that's not Kansas State, and that's not Texas Tech. I think those are the ones that are going to be in the mix, though. But here's why I think Baylor could be seen as the biggest threat to both Kansas State and Arizona State for the chances to go to the Big 12 championship. And it's because they will be, by the time they get to face Arizona State, which you got to go to Waco, by the time that you got to face Kansas State, which we have to go to Waco, they get both of us in Waco, they'll be battle tested. They start the season against Auburn. Then they go on the road against SMU, and then they take on you in Arizona State. Then they take on Kansas State, and they get to do that all in the first 6 games of their season, meaning hopefully they're not beaten up. They're not taken, you're not, tore down like the Big 12 does to you by the time you get to week 12. All that happens before week 6, and you get those 4 big games. Auburn, SMU, Arizona State, Kansas State, they get to take care of that right away. So that's why I think Baylor is an absolute scary scene. And maybe I'm wrong. And maybe we're completely off on Baylor. Who knows? Because that's definitely can happen. There's going to be one team in this conference, Richie, where we're just super high on, and they find a way. They finish 12th. Like, it's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. It's inevitable. I just don't see it being Baylor. I could see them being one of the teams that when we get the week before week 12, when we're leading up to the final week of the season, and we're talking about all the different tiebreakers of who has to win, who has to lose to make sure your team makes it in, Baylor will be one of those teams. It just depends on, do you have that tiebreaker over Baylor, or do they have it over you and Waco? Yeah.
Yep. And I'm high on Baylor this year. And back in like February, my way too early bold prediction, I said it was going to be ASU Baylor. And I had a lot of raised eyebrows. And I had a lot of people that called me crazy. And we're getting ready to go into July. And now it's like, I don't know, Baylor might be one of those teams. So Baylor, very interesting. But I love that you bring up the first few games of their season, because you're playing an SEC team who is the heat is on for Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
Right.
Auburn's an up and coming team. Yeah.
Yep. If you look at that receiving core, oh my gosh, like that's deadly. So, but SEC team, you have SMU. They made the playoff last year. They're a really good team. You have Kansas State, one of the perennial best teams in the Big 12, with like 1 or 2 exceptions in the last 20 years, it feels like. You have ASU, who waltzed into the Big 12 last year and ran the conference. Like, Baylor's either going to be set up to win or at least appear in the conference title game, or they're going to be out of it before we even hit the halfway point in the year. I like that we're in agreement on Baylor. I love what you said about Texas Tech, at the risk of making Red Raider fans upset. And I do love Texas Tech. So take this with a grain of salt, please, Texas Tech fans. Are you the Texas A&M of the Big 12? A lot of money, a lot of investments going to that team. Never live up to the hype. I'm sorry. I don't mean that, but I am curious with the bottom line here, Christian. As wide open as this competition is for the Big 12 title, ASU, Kansas State, we still have BYU in there until further notice. I know Jake Retzloff is not going to be playing quarterback, but that's still a really good team. We have Baylor. We have Texas Tech. Kansas could be coming back. A lot of people are high on Utah. Who knows with Colorado? Maybe our man Parker Ainsworth from Locked On Cougs is onto something with Connor Wegman. And with Houston, they certainly are going to be onto something next year, though, when that recruiting class comes in. But the bottom line, Big 12 is going to be a wide open race. ASU, there's a reason, right, wrong, or indifferent, Sun Devils fans, why they are not the favorites to win the conference. And Kansas State is one of those teams. This was super fun conversation. Christian, as always. The good people can follow your content where, my friend?
Locked On K-State on Twitter, X. That's where you can find all the K-State content. And then, of course, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, Locked On Kansas State, bringing you content every day. Just like over on Locked On Sun Devils, where I'm sure you're hoping for a Brett Brennan extension, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Keep him around, for sure. Can we get No Fafita 3 more years of eligibility? Whatever we got to do. So, and I mean, I know you guys are looking forward to next year, Farmageddon, when Rocco Becht is gone. And I know that you and Nick Maravitz from Locked On Cyclones are always having good conversations too. So, bottom line, people, there's a lot of Big 12 shows that you need to check out. But definitely make Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On K-State your first listens of the day. We appreciate each and every single one of our followers, and especially our everydayers who are tuning in to our shows every day. Thanks as always, guys. We will catch you later. Until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils and Locked On Kansas State.